It's another South African show, and the South Africa's economy showed only marginal growth of about 0.1% in the first quarter of this year. This shows a stagnating economy. And with me to discuss this and many other issues is Mustafa Jinod. You're welcome to the show.
Okay, welcome. Yes. So South Africa's economy grew, what, is it zero point 0.1 in the first quarter?
Yeah, zero point 0.1 in the first quarter.
And usually, on average, they do zero point 0.7 a year, which is it's not that great. But
Yeah,
zero point 0.1,
at
that means
least.
it's a sign that the economy is slowing down. And if they're not careful, they're going to find themselves in a recession. I think the way the world is going now, with the wars and everything, and with South Africa's heavy dependence on the US dollar and on foreign currency, is going to get worse. Um, I think the main problem of this is several things. They have a trade deficit. South Africa is very wealthy in minerals, things like gold and things like that. But they're trading raw materials. Raw materials are cheaper than finished products.
Yeah.
And if they can't make finished products, then they send raw materials to China. Then China develops things and sells them and makes more money on top of it. They probably sell them back to South Africa. So this goes back to what we keep saying. South Africa needs to start investing in infrastructure, education, and skill so that they don't need to be sending raw materials. They should actually be producing materials like China and exporting them all over the world. But once again, these fucking politicians, ANC, DA, and all of them, their hands are in businesses. They want business. Even these raw materials that are being made are made mostly by foreign direct investment. So
Yeah.
it's foreign companies that are even breaking down the raw materials and stuff. And then that means they get more of the profit once the finished product is done anyway. What do you think?
You're absolutely
And,
spot on
that's
that.
little because the ANC and DA have sold South Africa. So South Africa's resources belong to foreign investors. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Why export raw materials? For instance, iron. South Africa has a lot of iron. They export their iron. Meanwhile, they import finished products that are made of iron and steel, which really doesn't make any sense. What does it cost them to have furnaces that can, extract iron from its ore and then use it to make the finished products that are being imported from
And
abroad?
what is the
So
problem? They don't have the skilled labor or
yes, they
the
don't have the
infrastructure.
skilled
They're
labor.
not spending money. They're not even spending money to produce to get these things. When the Afrikaners were running the country, and I'm not saying the Afrikaners are good, but when they were running the country, they were doing a lot better at this at infrastructure. This government is corroding. Now that South Africa is in the hands of black people, and I think it should stay in the hands of black people, but they need to do better. But while now it's in the hands, the country is reversing and becoming like other African countries, is becoming a third world country. And because there's no excuse for the government to not spend millions on education, and like I said, I'm going to keep repeating myself, and on infrastructure, skilled labor too. And as the economy gets worse, they're going to lose a lot of white people and black educated people and skilled people to other countries. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, they need to develop their labor force to be more skilled,
Yeah.
especially in the manufacturing and mining sector, which are also responsible for a lot of revenue. You discover that most of the metals like platinum, coal, and gold that are being mined, they're labor-intensive industries that require a lot of skilled worker. And if you look at the electric power issue too, there are a lot of load shedding and power cuts. This sector needs a lot of electric power to be efficient for it
Yeah.
to drive revenue, and that's one of the problems. You know,
It's mismanagement and corruption.
yeah, the South African power issue is a big problem because most of these industries need power to drive
Yeah,
production.
and it's management and several things. South Africa had nuclear. I think they have. I don't know if they still use nuclear energy, but even if they're still using it, they're degrading it. Once again, need to spend money on energy production and these types of things. But it's just corruption.
It's
You see,
corruption.
whoever's heading Eskom or whatever it is that runs electricity, it's just corrupt people. Zuma's the AMC, not Zuma, and Zuma too. Zuma, in, not in, I'm not going to put in Becky's name there, but Ramaphosa, what's the boy's name? Steenhuisen.
Steinhoff,
Steenhuisen.
yeah. The
Yeah,
DA
I'm
guy,
going to become African.
the
I
DA
have my
guy.
Trump hat. I'm DA. Steenhuisen. All of them are corrupt people, and their families are doing well at the expense of South Africa. Now let's talk about the social problems: rape, xenophobia. Let's take away xenophobia because that's not a big problem. Rape, violence, addiction, alcoholism. trauma, not just for black people, white people. This is a country that's beset by so much trauma, and that affects the labor force, and they're not productive. This is why a lot of people are coming across the border to work. So there's a problem within the country where the drug issue, the trauma, the historical violence, all of it is a distraction in which you have a labor force which is ill, mentally ill, socially ill. Same thing. I'm not judging. We have the problem in Africa. Nigeria doesn't have the problem. In Nigeria, it's just corruption. So what we're saying is that more and more South Africans are depressed and under trauma and the crime level. So they have a lesser field of productive people than they should have. White, black, everybody. So this is a big problem, and we need to focus on it. They're focused on going to sending Ramaphosa to the U.S. to say that there's no genocide. Nobody cares if there's genocide or not in your country. What we want to fucking care about is why is there such a lack of production? What are your thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, the lack of production is exacerbated by, like you rightly mentioned, the high unemployment rate. And you can't employ people that
Yeah, which
are
is
not skilled.
caused by problems like alcohol. And I'm not judging.
Exactly.
I'm just saying these are the social
No, you're
problems. Yeah,
absolutely right. The social vices are there for everybody to see. High
yeah.
levels of crime, alcoholism, rape, and of course corruption. There's a lot of bureaucracy and deals being done by the government and some of this foreign direct investment. Some of these companies come to South Africa, they set up industries, and then the profit they make, instead of reinvesting in South Africa, they just flight it back to their
Okay, the money goes.
country,
I keep
and,
saying
and
South
then they
Africa losing.
settle the government.
I don't know if it's still the truth, but there was a time when South Africa was losing 70% of its GDP leaves the country, or maybe it's 30, but it's whatever it is, it's a high number. Almost 50% of the GDP that's produced in South Africa goes to foreign companies outside the country. So, foreign companies, and is making other countries rich, which means South Africa's wealth is being drained and
Yeah.
looted. Meanwhile, they rely too much on minerals. These minerals that they're selling crudely, the market fluctuations go up and down because of the war in Russia and demand and everything changes in demand supply. So South African minerals are getting weaker, which is why we saw the mining shafts getting closed months ago, or was it last year or
Yeah.
earlier? Yeah, last year where there were people stuck under the ground because they were going there to take gold. So mining companies, South African mining companies, are slowing down as well because they're not reinvesting the profits into developing the infrastructure, and also they're not paying the mining workers a lot. So it's a big problem. And what this is the slow dismantling of South Africa being looted by foreign interests. And this is why Ramaphosa is in power and in bed with the DA because they're working together to sell out the country for their own personal wealth. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I quite agree with you. And the problem is with the government and the corruption in doing deals with some of these companies. What does it take South Africa to fix? I feel the most challenging issue is the electric power issue. Power shortages and cuts. This affects the industries who need power to produce. What does it cost them to fix the power problem? But because there's a lot of corruption at the
Yep,
very
yep, yep.
highest level, so they're not getting enough power to drive the industries. Look at the ports. The ports is one area where a country makes a lot of revenue, and even the road
Mm.
infrastructure is not good enough. And you need good road infrastructure to be able to market finished products. The government needs to sit down and develop these things. This will invite more investment and help, some of the infrastructures that are old, are old and aging to begin to help drive the economy. I
Yeah.
feel like
And
you rightly
there's
mentioned,
no political
government is
will.
in bed with a lot of
Yeah.
these
There's
people,
no political will because
and there's no political will as
no,
well.
the government knows what it's supposed to do, but it won't. And the only party, I'm not even going to put Jacob Zuma's party in there because Zuma is just a nationalist. He's a Zulu nationalist. He's not really for socialism. The only parties are PAC and EFF, which are disorganized. EFF is disorganized because Malema is ruining it. But they stand for the country, the resources of the country belong to the people, in the sense that there should be a socialistic government in place in which South Africa's resources belong to South Africa, and it controls how the resources are produced, how industry is done, and everything for the benefit of the people. What's his name tried this. I lived in Zimbabwe when I was 12. Mugabe tried it. It worked for a little bit, but because of sanctions and outside interference. But South Africa has no excuse. They don't need to be afraid of America. This American aid that America keeps saying, they're trying to make the people think that we have to fall in line with the West because of American aid. That American aid is just, it doesn't help your economy. They send you food stuff, or they pay some of the salaries of your farm workers and things like that. That's not going to build industry in South Africa. To build industry, you have to do like what China and Russia did. The whole country needs to be mobilized towards production of goods and also towards keeping the society functioning and sustainable and well. All of it plays together. When you have no crime, you have security, you have education, you have infrastructure, you have electricity, everybody's happy, then everybody produces. You'll have an economic boom, which makes sense. That's all I have to say for today. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. AIDS from any
I'm
country.
on fire today. I'm fire me. Maybe because I'm sober.
When you collect aid from any country, it just makes you impoverished. And you
Yes,
and you rightly you hit the right notes by saying production is what drives the economy. Because when
yes,
you produce, you can sell for foreign exchange, and then your gross domestic product can then grow, and then your economy can do better. And some of the borrowing that South Africa has been doing, they have not been transparent with the borrowing.
oh yeah,
They've been stealing the money instead of using the money to develop critical infrastructure.
pocketing.
Yeah, like electricity. So the rising debt too is another burden on the economy that they need to look out for. I just look at the problem we have here. Nigeria has borrowed trillions of naira to try and revamp our refineries. Yet those refineries are not functioning. Largely, most of those monies borrowed from IMF go into pockets of our political leaders. So I guess it's the same thing that is playing out in South Africa as well. Some of them are not
Yeah,
transparent with some of the borrowing that is
yeah.
being done. Those borrowing are supposed to be targeted at critical infrastructures that need revamping in South Africa, basically.
And the big difference is that South Africa has uh, already had infrastructure built in from the apartheid era,
Yeah.
and it has a little bit better it has more overall wealth. But the difference is that in Nigeria there's corruption, but everybody's sort of poor. In South Africa there's a steep divide between the very rich and the poor, which is what leads
Mhm.
to the violence and crime, which is also effective starting to happen in Nigeria too. So these
Yeah.
are big problems that need to be dealt with. I keep saying it, nobody wants to listen. The only answer is socialism and nationalization of resources. If the government is going to privatize resources like they do maybe in some places like China, the government still has to be there to have a lot of regulations to make sure that there's no scams going on. All right, take us out, Afolabi.
Yeah, so basically, it's been a very wonderful show. I feel if the government is going to improve anything, they have to educate those people that commit crime. Most of them commit crime because of poverty and lack of, education and skills. And I think it's on that note that I'll be rounding up. And from myself and Mustafa, we'll be back again.
Yeah, we'll be back. The dream duo.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Yeah,
Enjoy
you
enjoy
too.
your day.
Yeah, sure.